pure experiences.
Welcome to the Pure Experiences Podcasts.
Pointers from Nisargadatta Maharaj, number 17. Nomina and Phenomena. It was one of those mornings, perhaps a Monday, when there were only few of us, the regular addicts. Maharaj sat with his eyes closed, still like a statue. After some time, he suddenly started speaking softly, so softly that we were unconsciously moved nearer to him. He continued to sit with his eyes closed and went on speaking, or rather, thinking aloud. People think that I am a Jnani. They come to me from all over the world, from Canada to Australia and New Zealand, from England to Japan. Most of them have read I Am That and come all the way to Bombay only to meet me. With great difficulty they are able to locate this little old house of mine in a dirty, narrow street. They climb up the stairs and find a small, dark man in the simplest of clothing, sitting in a corner. They think this man doesn't look like a Jnani. He does not dress impressively, as someone known as Nisargadatta Maharaj could be expected to do. Could he really be the one? What can I say to these people? I tell them quite frankly that my education is up to the level which can barely put me in category of the literate. I have not read any of the great traditional scriptures, and the only language I know is my native Marathi. The only enquiry I have pursued, but pursued it relentlessly, like a hunter pursues his quarry, is this: I know I am, and I have a body. How could this happen without my knowledge and consent? And what is this knowledge I am? This has been my lifelong pursuit, and I am fully satisfied with the answers I have reached. This is my only Gyan. Yet people believe I am a Jnani. My Guru told me, you are Brahman. You are all and everything. There is nothing other than you. I accepted my Guru's word as truth, and now, for 40 odd years, I have been sitting in this very room doing nothing except talking about it. Why do people come to me from distant lands? What a miracle! After pursuing my enquiry to its logical conclusion, what have I arrived at? The whole thing is really simple. If only one sees the picture clearly. What is this me that I am concerned with? The immediate answer, of course, is this me, this body. But then, the body is only a psychosomatic apparatus. What is the most important element in this apparatus, which qualifies it to be known as a sentient being? It is undoubtedly the consciousness without which this apparatus, while perhaps technically alive, would be useless as far as its functioning is concerned. This consciousness obviously needs a physical construct in which to manifest itself. So, consciousness depends upon the body. But what is the body made of? How does the body come into existence? The body is merely a growth in the woman's womb during a period of about 9 months. The growth of what is conceived by the union of the male and female sexual fluids. These fluids are the essence of the food consumed by the parents. Basically, therefore, both consciousness and the body are made of and are sustained by food. Indeed, the body itself is food, one body being the food of some other body. When the food essence, the vital sexual fluids, grows from conception into a tiny body and is delivered out of the mother's womb, it is called birth. And when this food essence gets decayed due to age or illness, and the psychosomatic apparatus happens to get destroyed, it is called death. This is what happens all the time. the objective universe projecting and dissolving innumerable forms. The picture keeps on changing all the time. But how am I concerned with this? I am merely the witness to all this happening. Whatever happens during the period of the happening, in each case, affects only the psychosomatic apparatus, not the I that I am. This is the extent of my knowledge, basically. Once it is clear that whatever happens in the manifested world is something apart from me, the I, all other questions resolve themselves. At what stage exactly did I come to have the knowledge of my existence? What was I before this knowledge I am came to me? This knowledge I am has been with me ever since I can remember, perhaps a few months after this body was born. Therefore, memory itself must have come with this knowledge I am, this consciousness. What was the position before that? The answer is I do not know. Therefore, whatever I know of anything has its beginning in consciousness, including pain and pleasure, day and night, waking and sleeping. Indeed, the entire gamut of dualities and opposites in which one cannot exist without the other. Again, what was the position before consciousness arose? These interrelated opposites inevitably must have existed, but only in negation, in unicity, in wholeness. This must then be the answer. This unicity is what I am, but this unicity, this identity, this wholeness cannot know itself, because in it there exists no subject as separate from an object, a position that is necessary for the process of seeing or knowing or cognizing. In other words, in the original state of unicity or wholeness, no medium or instrument exists through which knowing may take place. Mind cannot be used to transcend the mind. The eye cannot see itself. Taste cannot taste itself. Sound cannot hear itself. Phenomena cannot be phenomena without noumena. The limit of possible conceptualization, the abstract of mind, is noumenon, the infinity of the unknown. Noumenon, the only subject, objectifies itself and perceives the universe manifesting phenomenally within itself, but apparently outside, in order to be a perceivable object. For the noumenon to manifest itself objectively as the phenomenal universe, the concept of space-time comes into operation, because objects, in order to be cognizable, have to be extended in space by giving them volume and must be stretched in duration or time, because otherwise they could not be perceived. So now I have the whole picture. The sentient being is only a very small part within the process of the apparent mirrorization of the noumenon into the phenomenal universe. It is only one object in the total objectivization, and as such, we can have no nature of our own. And yet, and this is important, phenomena are not something separately created or even projected, but are indeed noumenon, conceptualized or objectivized. In other words, the difference is purely notional. Without the notion, they are ever inseparable, and there is no real duality between noumenon and phenomena. This identity, this inseparableness, is the key to the understanding, or rather the apperceiving of our true nature. Because of this basic unity between the noumenon and the phenomenon is lost sight of, we would get bogged down in the quagmire of objectivization and concepts. Once it is understood that the nomenon is all that we are, and that the phenomena are what we appear to be as separate objects, it will also be understood that no entity can be involved in what we are. And therefore, the concept of an entity needing liberation will be seen as nonsense. And liberation, if any, will be seen as liberation from the very concept of bondage and liberation. When I think about what I was before I was born, I know that this concept of I am was not there. In the absence of consciousness, there is no conceptualizing, and whatever seeing takes place is not what an entity sees as subject-object, but seeing from within, from the source of all seeing. And then, through this awakening, I realize that the all-enveloping wholeness of the Absolute cannot have even a touch of the relative imperfection. And so I must relatively live through the allotted span of life until the end of it. This relative knowledge merges in the knowing state of the Absolute. This temporary condition of I know, and I know that I know, then merges into that eternal state of I do not know, and I do not know that I do not know. Here ends the chapter number 17, Nomina and Phenomena. The nomina and phenomena are the words borrowed from Western philosophy. Nomina here may mean the source, the unmanifested, the hidden, and phenomena is the apparent, that which appears out of the unmanifest. Nomina is the source and phenomena is the expression. So we get a glimpse into the thought process of Nisargadatta Maharaj here, how he arrived at this knowledge that I am the Absolute. He says, I do not know anything at all. And he is wondering why people come to me from all over the world. He said, I only know that I am and I have a body. This is the only enquiry that I pursued, as told by my Guru. His Guru said that you are the Brahman. You are all and everything. There is nothing other than you. And he said, I simply accepted it and meditated upon this. I held this enquiry in my mind. That's all I've done. And I do not know anything more than this. And he says that the meaning of the sentence that I know what I am is very simple. It simply means that I am not the body. I am not any other object. And I am not the consciousness also. And he goes on to say that the body appeared. The body and consciousness both appeared to me. He tries to answer this question, what was I before I was born? And then this may look like a silly question. This is a strange question. But he is trying to know the essence of the I. And it seems that the body was born and the body will die. And it seems that I know about the body and the world only through memory. The memory is of being conscious. The consciousness appeared with the body. He says that the consciousness is dependent on the body. But it is the essential thing, because without the consciousness, the body won't be sentient. There will be nothing that knows the body. And the world appears with the consciousness. The essence of the world and the body is consciousness, because without it, they do not exist. So this duality appeared, and the world is obviously dual. There are polar opposites that constitute this world. So he puts the question, what was there before these dualities appeared? What was there before the body and consciousness appeared? Since it was body that was born, that means it cannot be I which was born. Since the consciousness depends on the body, so all these dualities, they must have come from somewhere, and we cannot say that it came from nothing. And since it came from something, there must be a potential in there for both consciousness and the phenomena, both the experience and the experiencer. And this potential is hidden, is invisible before these dualities appear. This potential is what is absolute. The absolute awareness has the potential to become the fragmented consciousness and also to become all the objects and bodies and whatnot. So the I must be this absolute, which was there before birth, during birth, after birth, which will be there after death of the body, after conscious existence ends. And he says, this is the extent of my whole knowledge. And he says, whence it is clear that whatever happens in the manifested world is something apart from me, all other questions resolve themselves. This absolute contains everything, and therefore it is a wholeness. It is non-separable, inseparableness in a potential form. It contains all the dualities, since that is how it happened. Although I do not know this, all I know is dualities. All I know that the world appeared, the body appeared, and it is constantly changing. It is coming and going. So it must have appeared out of the source, out of the noumenon, which must be the only thing there which existed and which still exists. Only that this duality appears in the absolute. And he says that this duality is not really there. It is in the form of concepts. It is just an objectification. That which does this objectification is the mind, the processes of the mind. So the absolute itself is totally unaware of itself, and it divides itself into dualities. It divides itself into many, and now it can perceive itself in many forms. The forms come and go, but the absolute remains. It takes many, many forms. And these processes in the absolute, or the mind, they divide, produce the duality, produce the illusion of a separate subject that is witnessing a separate world of objects. So he says, this is the whole picture. The sentient being is only a very small part within the process of apparent mirrorization of the noumena into the phenomenal universe. So it is apparent world. It simply appears. Actually, there is no creation, and not even projection, but the noumenon is conceptualized or objectivized. And he says, in other words, the difference is purely notional. Without the notion, they are ever inseparable. And there is no real duality between noumenon and phenomena. So it is the mind that separates, creates the illusion of duality. When this is stopped, the oneness is seen as the background of this apparent duality. It is what I am. So he says, once this is understood that the noumenon is all that we are, and that the phenomena are what we appear to be as separate objects, it will also be understood that no entity can be involved in what we are. And therefore the concept of an entity needing liberation will be seen as nonsense. And the liberation, if any, will be seen as liberation from the very concept of bondage and liberation. So he also breaks down the concept of liberation, because bondage is an illusion. That which is never bound. That which is separate appears to be bound by this very experience that it is going through, the experience of the body and the world. But in reality, I am not bound. And the liberation is simply to know this. The liberation is liberation from the concept of bondage and liberation. He totally destroys this idea that the liberation can be achieved through a long and effortful process or practice. In order to be liberated, all we need to do is see that the bondage was an illusion. That which is absolute cannot be bound. There is nothing else there which can bind it. And it is simply undergoing this play and appears as a sentient being engaged in the experience of the world and of the body, of the mind, and so on. Once it is realized that this separation and the phenomena are simply appearances, there is no need to liberate anything. There is no entity there which can be liberated, because the entity is not bound, it is not there, nothing can bind it. So as soon as this confusion is seen, this liberation, this idea of bondage and liberation, both are dropped. This is instant liberation. It is like a forgetting of our real nature. And once the real nature is seen, is remembered, then this concept, this belief of being bound is destroyed. Nothing remains there to be liberated. And he notes that in the state of absoluteness, before the birth happened, or before the duality appeared, there was no knowing, there is no conceptualizing, and nothing is seen from the point of view of this duality, the subject-object. The seeing is from within, from the source of all seeing. And this absolute is absolutely perfect. There is nothing to be done. All I need to do is let this life happen as it is happening. All the knowledge that we gather in this life is relative knowledge. It is knowledge of the appearances. The mind can know only that which appears, and all appearances are false. So all knowledge is false. And once this duality disappears, the body disappears, the consciousness associated with the body disappears, then the I merges with the absolute, and all knowledge is dropped. So he says the temporary condition of I know and I know that I know then merges into the eternal state of I do not know and I do not know that I do not know. So the knowledge ends. The one that knows also ends. There is nothing to know there in absolute. So this is a very important article where through this process of enquiry, we see how this awakening happened when you try to inquire what I was before the birth happened. And you go back to the moment of the birth and you see that a consciousness appeared. That's all I know. I do not know anything about birth. I do not know anything about prior to birth. All knowledge appeared with the consciousness. And since it cannot appear out of nowhere, and since everything that appears has this dual quality, that means there must be potential from where it is appearing, from where the both subject and object appear, and that potentiality is the absolute. It simply takes the form of dualities for a while and then disappears again. And that is all there is. Since whatever appears is not created, it is not even projected, it is only an idea in the mind, it is only a notion in the mind. The mind also appears. Along with the mind, this idea of separation appears, and along with the mind, it goes away. Nothing more happens. Nothing is bound and nothing gets liberated. The knowledge that happens is the relative knowledge of appearances. And it is destroyed as soon as the appearances are destroyed. So, in essence, nothing was born, nothing really appeared, nothing was really known, nothing really disappeared. Only that a point of view is changed and then changed back to the oneness, the inseparableness, the total seeing. So the important points that we can summarize from this very interesting article is that Nisargadatta says that I was never born. The body was born, the consciousness appeared, the world appeared, and I will never disappear. The body disappears, the world disappears. And it is only an appearance, a concept. Only a concept is born and the concept will disappear. And the second important point is nothing is bound. There is no bondage. There is nothing to bound this absolute, and nothing needs to be done to get rid of it, except to realize that there is nothing to get rid of. It is like forgetting of my essential nature. Once this nature is known, it is done. Nothing needs to be done. The body will continue with whatever it is doing. The mind will continue with whatever it is doing. These are all appearances, and they disappear in the absolute. So there is an uncanny similarity with Zen philosophy. And in case it appears confusing, there's no need to worry, because these statements will be repeated again and again, it looks like, in this whole book. The whole book is about this simple teaching only. So let us move on to the chapter number 18, which is titled, Let Us Understand Basic Facts. Almost all the visitors from abroad came to Maharaj after having read his book, I Am That. They say that on reading it, they felt a compulsive desire to meet Maharaj personally. Quite a few of them also say that they had been interested in the spiritual quest for many years. Let us take the case of an average foreign visitor. His first visit almost invariably raises a certain amount of doubt in his mind, whether he had done the right thing in spending so much money and his hard-earned annual leave in coming here, the dirty surroundings of Maharaj's house, the simplicity of his tiny loft room, his unimpressive physical appearance, and his plain attire. All these contribute to the initial doubt. Of course, after attending a couple of sessions, and certainly by the time he leaves, the foreign visitor is already looking forward to his next visit. There is also one other factor which initially keeps pricking the foreign visitor's mind. Maharaj's behavior is not unlike that of any other common man on the street, and it goes against his concept of how a sage, a jnani, should behave, though his concept itself may be exceedingly vague. He finds the walls of Maharaj's small room cluttered with pictures of numerous gods and saints. He sees him participating in the chanting of bhajans 4 times a day. He finds him smoking cheap country-made cigarettes all the time, and sometimes talking on trivial matters in a light-hearted manner. He finds all this very confusing. His preconceived notion about Maharaj was perhaps that of a saffron-robed patriarchal figure conversing gravely from an elevated seat some distance away from the visitors, occasionally bringing about a miracle or two in a condescending manner. Instead, he finds an utterly ordinary man. It is therefore not surprising that before the end of the very first session, our visitor cannot resist the temptation of asking why Maharaj, in spite of being a jnani, sings bhajans 4 times a day. Or perhaps the question could be, why does Maharaj find it necessary to smoke? Maharaj's usual answer in such cases is simple: why not? I have been associated with this body for 80 odd years. Why should it not receive the few crumbs which it has got used to? As for bhajans 4 times a day, it is a practice from the times of my Guru. If since then I have had what is usually called awakening, should I feel compelled to give up this old and harmless routine? One must go through one's allotted span of time. Does it matter what one does, so long as one does not knowingly hurt anyone else? It is as simple as that. Maharaj continues with this theme somewhat as under: if one sees or perceives things as they are, if one apprehends the total manifestation with the whole mind and not with the dichomatized mind of an individual, one is not far away from the great awakening. And then whatever one does is of no importance. Indeed, to think that an individual being can act independently is itself a mistake. What we are is the conscious presence and not the outside casing of consciousness, not the body which is only a psychosomatic apparatus used for cognizing the manifestation. This apparatus is only a spatio-temporal concept and as such has no independent existence and therefore cannot act independently, despite all appearances to the contrary. Let us understand this basic fact. What then is life? Life in this universe is nothing other than the functioning of manifestation, despite what each individual might think. Viewed in this perspective, the various destructive manifestations like floods and earthquakes lose their sting. Each body is nothing but food for someone else. Mouse for a cat, man or beast for a lion, lamb or chicken for a man, and so on. So what is good for one is evil for another. Indeed, whatever events seem to happen constitute nothing but the functioning of manifestation. To each individual, it all appears to be his own doing and experiencing, but the fundamental fact is that no phenomenal object, and that is all that a sentient being relatively is, can have any independent existence of its own. Once this is clearly apprehended, it will automatically follow that all responsibility and guilt are also imaginary concepts based upon the mistaken notion that a sentient being has independent existence, autonomy, and choice of action. Then, what about all the eminent exemplars in the various spheres of human activity, the arts, sciences, athletics, the great thinkers? We must admire the work done by consciousness through these various physical forms, but not the individual persons who are nothing more than conceptual phenomena. Let us understand and be clear about what really happens. The question that would follow is, if the individual persons do not achieve whatever has been achieved, who does? The answer is no one individually. The functioning of the manifestation takes place in consciousness through pragya, that brilliant actor-producer of this total dream show, who assumes all the roles in the great dream drama that this manifestation is. And the source of this conscious presence is the noumenon. Sentient beings appear to act and react, but the real functioning happens in consciousness. Let us, says Maharaj, admire the sky, the lovely moon and the twinkling stars. Let us write poems about the beauty of nature. Let us love the many avatars that have descended upon the earth through the ages. Let us sing bhajans 4 times a day, but let us at least understand the true position. I, noumenon, am all the functioning in consciousness. Finally, we may ask ourselves, what then are we doing all day? Are we not living our lives, we the millions of people in the world? If we could think deeply and rationally about what we know as life, we would easily come to the conclusion that all that we do throughout the day and day after day is nothing but objectifying. Indeed, manifestation is itself nothing but continuous objectivization, because when in deep sleep, consciousness rests, objectivization necessarily ceases, so does the objectified universe. In deep sleep, there is no self, no world, no God. What we think as doing is nothing but objectivization. Functioning of manifestation takes place so long as there is consciousness. By unnecessarily identifying oneself as the doer, one attracts responsibility and guilt. When the mind, which is the content of consciousness, is blank, when it fasts or rests, the spinning and weaving of the mind ceases and it calms down. When the mind stops doing, it merely is. In the absence of objectivization, our absolute presence is the manifested universe, is not we are, or rather I am. Let us at least understand these basic facts. So here ends the number 17, which is about the basic facts. So when people see Maharaj, they see an ordinary man. He is more ordinary than the ordinary. A poor fellow who smokes the handmade cigarettes, lives in a dirty house, and is doing his routine as any other person around that area does. Sings and prays. There are pictures of deities hanging in the small room, and he is nothing special. So people obviously ask, you have this much knowledge, you are awakened, and why are your actions like this? So there is a very simple answer that the Maharaj gives, that what you are looking at is an appearance. It is not me. What it does is pure conditioning. It does not matter how it is conditioned, because it does not really exist. It simply appears in this way. It is appearing like this in millions of forms, billions of forms. And this is one of the form. Why should it be anything special? And why do you even think that it has to be special? Because there is some awakening there, and it should do something else. It may happen, it may not happen. It is not necessary. If it happens by its own, it is another appearance. If it is done, then it is an appearance of a pretension. What it is doing, he calls it as the functioning of manifestation. What we call as Maya in Advait. What is happening here is nothing but an appearance. That obviously raises the question that what is this life? And he answers that it is nothing but a continuous objectification. That is all. Experience is being created out of infinite potential of the Absolute. Everything else is a concept. Everything is an objectification. So there is no person. There is no doer of the apparent actions that happen through that person. There is nobody who thinks, and nobody has a will. There is no independent existence of people or objects. People do not have autonomy. There is no choice there. Whatever is happening, the smallest to the greatest thing, the tiny and the biggest achievements are simply manifestation, simply objectification of what already is. As long as there is this consciousness, this will continue, and then it stops. So this can appear a little bit depressing to those who have not taken the absolute position yet, who are still tangled in the appearances, the illusion. This may appear very depressing to the ego, to this mind, which takes itself as the separate self, independent of the world, with a free will, with dreams and desires, which it thinks is my own. So Nisargadatta says that let us understand at least the true position, which is I nominal am all the functioning in consciousness. That is all there is. Take this position, take this point of view. When you stop objectification, what remains? In the absence of objectification, our absolute presence remains. The manifested universe is seen as false, as an illusion. So why worry about that which is not there? Why not let it happen as it is happening? And this worry, this depression and this ignorance is a part of the happening. It is a part of the illusion. So who is worried? Who is unhappy with this conclusion that I am nobody? Of course, the illusion is worried. The illusion does not want to die. The illusion wants to achieve. The illusion has the dreams. So better to have them all. Better to let it proceed in this way. But when this absolute position is taken, it hardly matters what happens. It is like the state of the deep sleep. It appears awakened state. The totally awakened person is totally asleep, genuinely asleep, not concerned with anything, not concerned with what is appearing outside, not even concerned with what this body is doing, what this mind is doing. Totally detached, is totally free of all concepts. While from outside it appears that to be totally engaged in absolutely ordinary activities. If the same awakening happened in a very sophisticated person, very educated and beautiful person, then that will be the appearance. That will be the illusion. It does not really matter.
Pure experiences.
You were listening to Pure Experiences by Tharun Pradhan.